Hey science kids, welcome back to some more science, 'cause science is cool. This week we're going to continue talking about nocturnal critters. And this week's critter is not a fuzzy critter like the last few weeks have been. We're going to talk about a creature that's actually a bird, and it's probably the most well-known nocturnal critter. Guess what? It's the owl. Yes, owls are cool. Now owls come in all sorts of different sizes, starting with this little guy, the screech owl, and they also come in big sizes, like this great horned owl or this snowy owl. So we're going to talk about some cool owl facts. You're going to see a fun owl song. You're going to make a cool art project. And if you got time, you're going to bake a cool owl cooking project. So let's get started. Science is cool. So let's begin by talking about what owls look like. Here's an owl. This is a great horned owl that I made out of foam. It's about the right size of a real one. I want you to notice that the wings on this owl are almost as long as my arm span. They're pretty big owls. And I want you to look at this owl's head. You see those two tufts up on top? A lot of people think that those are ears. But the first thing we can learn is that owls do not have ears on the outside of their head the way mammals do. The bat's ears are on the outside, so are the beavers and the raccoons. Owls are birds, and birds do not have ears on the outside of their head. You would have to kind of dig around in their little feathers down there to find out their little ear holes. That doesn't mean they don't hear well, even though the ears aren't on the outside. Turns out that owls have really, really good hearing. The ear canals inside their heads are actually much larger than ours, and our ears are symmetrical, which means if you draw a line down the middle of our head, there's one on this side and one on that side at exactly the same spot. And owls' ears are actually a little bit offset like this. And with their great big head acting like a satellite dish, it brings the sound into their head and their ears, and they can hear their prey sneaking on the forest floor. That's good, because a lot of times the stuff that they are sneaking up on are really quiet, like little bunnies or mice or shrews or voles, gophers, things that really don't want to get caught. And in case you didn't know, and I forgot to mention, owls are predators. That means they chase down, catch, and eat their prey. So they have to be super fast, and they have to be able to hear those little critters, or they're going to be super hungry. Next, let's talk about the owl's eyes. Take a look at those eyes. Whether it's the big snowy owl or the tiny screech owl, their eyes, in comparison to the rest of their head, are really big. Look at my eyes. They're just kind of small spots on my head, but for an owl, they're huge. Owls have huge eyes. That's important because they hunt at night. And if you look at the black part of their eyes, the pupils, and you look at the black part of my eye, my pupil, it's not as big as an owl. That black part, when it opens up, it lets light into your eye. The bigger that black part, the more light gets in. Owls have very large pupils so that they can see very well in the dark. Now, a cool fact about owls is if I want to see something over here, I can hold my head straight and turn my head. Try it. You can do it too. I'm holding my hand on my nose so I don't accidentally move my head. If I keep my head straight, I can look all over the place. Owls can't do that. To have those great big eyes protected, they've got a bone inside their skull that the eyes sit in, and they cannot move their eyes around like that. In order for them to look over here, they have to turn their whole head. Now, everyone's seen the picture of the owl with his head on backwards. They can't quite turn all the way around, but they get pretty close. And the reason they can do that is they have a lot of bones in their neck, a lot more bones than we do, that allow that neck to turn almost all the way around. That's pretty cool, I think. Imagine if you could look behind you without having to turn your whole body. Owls are pretty cool that way. Next, let's talk about the owl's feet. On the bottom of the feet, it's got some sharp toenails called talons. It uses those talons to swoop down and grab the prey and take it up to its house. The owl doesn't land on the ground and eat because that would be a big problem. First of all, another animal might try to eat the owl. And second, lots of other animals might see that the owl has something nice and tasty and dead and want to try to take it from the owl. So owls will swoop on down, grab their prey in those sharp talons, and carry it up to their house to eat it up there in safety. Next, let's talk about the owl's beak. Like all predator birds, the owl's beak is curved like this, not like a duck where it's flat, it's curved. It uses that beak to kill the animals that it catches. It swoops on down, it grabs them, it brings them to a spot it's going to eat them, and then it uses that beak to kill the animal and then eat it. Now, owls like to try to eat their food all at once. They've got pretty big, their beaks can open up pretty wide, and they try to swallow their food whole. So this kind of owl might grab, say, a little mouse and just gobble it on down. But if it can't eat the whole thing, it will use its beak to kind of rip and tear that meat out, kind of like we use our teeth to rip and tear food. Now, little baby owls can't rip and tear their own food, so the mama will do that for them. That's the beak. Cool, right? And the owl's beak mostly is black like this one. So speaking of food and eating, owls don't have little fingers and little forks and knives to cut up their food when they eat it. We've already talked about how they use their sharp beak to either swallow that food whole or rip chunks off. And when they eat their food, they eat everything. They eat the fur, the teeth, the eyeballs, the skin, the nails. And honestly, their bodies can't digest all of that stuff. So they have a part of their body right after their stomach called a gizzard, that all the parts that don't get used up go into this special place and get squished on down into a little pellet that the owl then barfs it back up. It throws this pellet back up. And the pellet is a tube or a blob of super squashed fur and teeth and nails and bones, everything that the owl's body can't use. And depending on where they nest, they throw all these things up all over on the ground. So if you're ever walking through the woods and you see this, it's kind of hard. It's not like gushy or anything like that. If you see one of these, you know an owl is nesting nearby. And scientists can actually collect these things, these owl pellets, and they can open them up and see what that owl that lives in that area has been eating. If they're eating like a mouse or a bunny, they'll have mouse and bunny bones in there and fur and gush. So that's actually pretty cool, isn't it? Next, let's talk about owl feathers. Owls, because they are birds and not mammals, they're not covered in hair. They're covered in feathers, just like other birds. Their bodies are super, super light, even though they can be very big. And that helps them fly very well. Now, the ends of their feathers have a special shape to them that makes them really, really quiet. Because if you're a hunter at night, when it's quiet outside, you can't be banging around and make a bunch of noise. You'll scare everything away. So the owl sits very quietly up in the tree or wherever it is, and it listens to the outside, and when it hears something, it drops. And these wings are so quiet that the little critters don't even hear them coming. And then it grabs them and it go eat them. Now, you'll notice here I have two different color owls. Owls are really good at camouflage with their feathers. So where do you think this one lives? If you guess someplace snowy, you'd be right. And it's called the snowy owl. This is the great horned owl. It lives like in a forest or someplace. But owls also come in other colors. So where do owls live? If you said a nest, you'd be right. But unlike a lot of other birds, they don't build their own nest. Usually they find an old hollow tree, or sometimes they even take an abandoned nest of other birds. Some birds will even make their nest just on a dip in the ground. That works for them too. And that's where they'll lay their eggs, and that is where they'll make their home. The dad and the mom owl will help raise the babies together. When the babies are little, the dad will go off and do all the hunting so that the mom can keep the babies warm and safe from other predators, because other kinds of birds will try to eat baby owls. Once the babies are big enough, well, then the mom has to go hunt too, because they just eat a lot at that point. And then finally the babies will be big enough to fly on their own. And by the way, for those of you who are PJ Masks fans, it's accurate. The name of a baby owl is an owlet. So finally, let's talk about owl noises. What noise does an owl make? Well, we are used to owls saying, hoo, hoo, hoo. And that's kind of right. Most owls make some kind of sound like a hoo, hoo sound, but not all of them. I have some sounds here for you to hear. I'll show you a picture of the owl that makes it, just so you can get an idea. Here's a silly owl song I think you'll enjoy.
You think owls are cool. Today you're gonna learn more here at school. So here's some owl facts that you may not know. You can take them with you wherever you go. Who wants to learn about owls? Who wants to learn about owls? Owls, they can hear from a long ways away, so you don't have to shout. They can hear what you say. They can spin their heads almost all the way around without it popping off and falling on the ground. Who wants to learn about owls? Who wants to learn about owls? They have sharp talons to snatch up their food. They'll hack up a pellet and it's not even rude. If you look at that pellet, you may find what an owl's digestive system leaves behind. They have special eyes that can see at night. When the sun goes down, they wake up instead. And when the sun comes up, they go to bed. Who wants to learn about owls? Who wants to learn about owls? Their feathers are so quiet, they barely make a sound. It helps them sneak up on critters crawling on the ground. Learning about owls is really, really fun. Now you can share your knowledge with everyone. Who wants to learn about owls? Who wants to learn about owls?
Project time! You're going to need the template that follows. If you're in school, your teacher will have it. If you're at home, take a screenshot and print it out. Okay, now you're ready to make your very own baby owl stick puppet. Hello, hoot, 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 hoot. For this one, you're going to need a few supplies. You're going to need scissors. you're going to need, if you're going to use the template as it is, not on colored paper, on white paper, then you're going to want to color your owls. So maybe some brown and then yellow for the eyes. You can see his little eyes are yellow. You might need a black for the beak. The other option is to cut some circles for the eyes and glue them on instead of these eyes. And then to cut a diamond shape for the beak. That's what this guy's got. You can see he's got glued on eyes and a diamond shaped beak. That's one way to do it. I'm going to actually make a snowy owl. So there's two kinds of owls on this paper. One of them has these little ear tufts. They're not really ears, we learned. They're just tufts of hair that look like ears. And this one does not, because the snowy owl doesn't really have that. So I'm going to make a snowy owl. So, and that's kind of easy too, because I don't actually have to color anything in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut my owl out. So no matter which owl you're doing, you're going to need to cut the shape out. If it's a snowy owl, then you don't really want to color it because they're white. If you're making anything other than a snowy owl, then you're going to need to color it in whatever color you want. And again, if you want to make this a rainbow owl, more power to you. And this is where you really have to be careful and kind of do your best cutting. Don't lop the wings off. I've been cutting a long time, so I'm a little bit quick. Do not need to go as fast as I do. I'm just showing you, you can stop the movie and take your time. But you are going to need 2 wings and the body. And then I am going to use the eyeballs that are on the paper, because why not? I can cut those, but the owl eyes are kind of yellow. So before I cut them out, I'm going to color them in. Just the white part I'm going to color yellow. Ta-da! And now I'm going to cut those out. And then I'm ready to put them together. If you want to trace this pattern, the one with the tufted ears, onto a colored paper, brown or something, you can make a brown owl without too much work. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is stick my wings on. My wings are going to be kind of flapping out to the side like that. You can make them any way you want. And now I'm going to put his eyes on. Stick. Stick. And if you don't have a beak to cut out, you can draw one on. So I'm going to actually just draw his beak on, and I'm just make a little triangle there. Ta-da! And then I don't actually have a second stick, so I'm going to borrow this one. The last thing, of course, would be to tape them onto a stick. This one's just taped on the back. Or you can just leave them like that and play with them. Hoo hoo hoo! Hi, I'm a snowy owl. Hoo hoo hoo! Cooking project time! For this special cooking project, you are going to be making owl barf cookies. Now remember, owls can't digest fur and teeth and bones. It goes into a special place called the gizzard, and then they throw it back up. Your cookies are going to be chocolate cookies with lots of little fun pieces in it. Cheerios, pretzels, whatever else you want to put in there. So, have fun with your owl barf cookies. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed learning about owls. They're super cool nocturnal animals. Woo, woo, woo! And remember, science is cool.